Steve Ramirez claims former live-in girlfriend Jennifer Flynn refuses to return his belongings. Jennifer is countersuing for money owed and for an assault.
Mr. Ramirez, you and the defendant dated and, I gather, lived together for a brief period of time. You had one child with you at the time?
Yes.
And it is your claim that she, after an argument, threw you out with your child and kept your property. The defendant says that when you left, you owed her some money, and instead of the money, you said to her, just keep my stuff. I don't want it. Sell it. She's also counterclaiming because she says you assaulted her. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. When did you move in with Miss Flynn, Mr. Ramirez?
She moved in with me about 4 months after we met to my home that I was renting.
Was that you moved in together?
This year.
2007.
2005.
When was it?
2005.
And when did you move into the apartment that you left?
We moved in at the end of July of 2006.
And you have one child. How old is that child?
She's 8.
And you have custody of her?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me what happened when you left, sir.
Well, when she kicked me out, me and my daughter, she just kicked me and my daughter out.
Well, tell me about that day.
Well, we were talking and I have an invention.
You have an invention?
Yes, ma'am, that me and my brother came up with. And Miss Flynn stated that she wanted 10% of something that doesn't exist. And I said, no, how am I going to give you 10% of something I don't even have? So that's where it started, and that upset her, like, just totally upset her. And she said, what? And I said, how am I going to give you 10% of something I don't even have? I can't.
What do you mean you don't even have? You had an invention you just told me.
Well, yes, ma'am, but it's just in the process now. I haven't...
Well, I assume that what she was saying is that in exchange for whatever financial contribution she was making, were you working at the time?
Yes, ma'am.
You were both working?
Yes.
Well, I assume she was saying that because you lived together as a couple, she wanted 10% if anything happens with this invention. And you said, no, I don't think you're entitled to that. So you're entitled to say that to her, Mr. Ramirez. If she wants 10% or 50%, then you got to get married. Then that's what the state does. The state says, well, then property becomes community property or joint property. But you're not married, she's not entitled to anything. So you're absolutely within your rights to say, I don't want to give you 10%. Is that when she threw you out?
Yes, ma'am.
What did she say?
Get out of my house. You and your daughter can get out of my house.
And is that what you did? You left?
Yes, ma'am.
And you left your things?
Yes, ma'am.
What things did you leave there?
I have a list of things, numerous things.
They better be big items, sir, because I don't get involved with saucepans and dishes.
That's just some of the things. That's not the personal belongings, like pictures and...
I'm going to cross certain things out here, Mr. Ramirez, that I think are ridiculous. Charbroiled barbecue with 2 propane tanks. Prairie dining. Did you purchase all of these things, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you purchase them while you and the defendant were living together?
No, ma'am. Prior.
You had these things?
Everything on that list is prior to our relationship.
Let us take a look at this. Are any of those things that you purchased while you were living together?
Probably some DVDs and CDs.
Other than that, those are all his things, correct?
Yeah.
You have to return them to him, all of them. Do you understand?
Oh, there's no neon picture.
Okay, cross it off.
There is a neon picture, Your Honor.
Cross it off. Okay, good. Inconsequential, all of those things within 5 days, sir, you arranged to have the movers there to pick them up. Isn't that nice?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Now, let's get to your counterclaim. You say he owes you money.
Yes.
And he assaulted you. Go.
Actually, the alleged invention that he has is something that my doctor asked him to make, and I actually have a picture of it.
What does that have to do with anything?
That's why I had asked him for 10% of his alleged
You're entitled
invention.
to ask.
So
he's entitled to say no.
My counterclaim is what he owes me when he was not working for October, November, and December.
You were not working October, November, December?
October and November, Your Honor.
And December. Well,
just a second. Were you working in December, sir?
No, ma'am.
So you didn't contribute to the household for those 3 months?
No.
So how much money do you owe her?
I don't feel I owe her anything.
Why not?
That's the way relationships work, Your Honor.
Why? Did she work all the time?
No, she doesn't work.
She doesn't work at all?
No.
How do you support yourself?
I receive disability and Social Security.
What's the nature of your disability?
I have a blood condition that affects my ankles to where I get a lot of blood clots, and I'm in the hospital a lot. I get a lot of infections.
So you were supporting the household and paying the mortgage on your Social Security? You have children?
I have one child.
How old?
9. Also,
just a second. Was your arrangement when you moved in that you would pay half the mortgage, sir?
No, ma'am.
What was your arrangement?
Just that we're going to move in together. and help each other out as a relationship does.
No. How did you handle the finances, Mr. Ramirez?
Well, I was working prior, and then I just
When you were
lost.
working prior, how did you handle the finances?
We just share them.
How did it work? You came home and you all both deposited checks into a joint account?
No, ma'am.
Well, how did it work? I want to know.
I would handle cash and to pay the bills.
How much?
It just depended on how much the bills were at the time.
Mr. Ramirez?
Yes.
How much would you hand her each month?
Maybe $1,200.
Each month?
No, not each month.
Well, that's
When
what
I
I'm
could.
asking you, sir. You don't play with me, Mr. Ramirez.
Yes.
You think you're smarter than I am?
No, ma'am.
What else?
He also owes me for his vehicle insurance from May to January, which I do have invoices for.
Just a second. Why did you pay in May? He was working in May.
Because I had added him to my insurance because he couldn't get it on his own. And with the money that he was giving
No, my
me-
darling. Listen to me. In May, he was working, so he was giving you money. In May, June, July, August, he was working. He was giving you money.
Not
you
enough.
Paid who cares? That's something I'm getting involved with. So far, he owes you $1,800, period.
Okay.
What's next?
So he owes me then $120 for vehicle insurance for October, November, and December, ma'am, when he was not working.
October, November, and December. You had a car?
Yes, ma'am.
She was paying the insurance?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. And you weren't paying
Helping.
anything?
And
But-
January.
Yeah.
Just, you weren't paying anything?
Not a penny.
Okay. How much a month?
$40 a month.
Okay. So it was 3 months or 4 months?
4.
160. What's next?
The satellite dish was a household bill.
Forget it. You still have the satellite dish, no?
I still have it.
Keep going.
I'm also countersuing for the assault.
Well, let me hear about the assault.
Okay. One night I was just in my house, in my room with my friend.
When?
Approximately the 14th of January.
After he had left?
After he had left. He came back into my house. He still had a key because his stuff was there, so I didn't change the locks. I changed my alarm code. I thought that was good enough. He came in anyhow. I had my room closed. When I opened my bedroom door to see who had come in, he was already right there. And he asked me
What were you
I'm
doing there?
I went to pack my daughter's things, her room, so I can...
Did you call her first?
No.
Why not?
I have a key.
You have no right to do that. You're not a tenant there. You hadn't paid rent. You have no right to go
Yes.
in.
When I received my first check, after I got my job, I handed her my first check.
No,
What date?
you didn't.
What date?
Like January,
No.
first week of February.
You mean after you moved out, you handed her a
Oh,
check?
no. No, Your Honor.
Baloney, Mr. Ramirez. Baloney. You had no right being there. None. So what happened?
He said, "Who's in there?" And I told him, "None of your business." He pushed the door open like this, and the door hit me in my face because I was on the other side of the door. I proceeded to push the door and tell him that he wasn't going to come in, that it was none of his business. And with his strength, he pushed me into a dresser that I had by the door, which bruised my
Why
arm.
did you do that, sir?
I did
I
not, Your
have
Honor.
pictures of my lip where the door busted my
Can
lip.
I see it, please?
And my witness was in my room. When he saw that it was just my friend Diana, he left. I told him I was calling the police. I had the police on the phone, and
Temper,
I
Mr.
also
Ramirez.
have a statement from
Temper,
my-
Mr. Ramirez. Ever been arrested?
Yes,
Domestic violence?
yes.
What do you have to say for yourself, sir? There's no question in my mind that you entered the house, that was a trespass, and if you assaulted her, that rises to the level of burglary. Do you understand? You should tell me, did you lose your temper?
No, Your Honor.
Well, tell me what you did. There's no question that you hurt her.
I entered the room, the house, and intent to gather my daughter's things from her room and some of my belongings. And then she came out. She said, "What are you doing here?" She said, "Get out of my house." I handed her the key, and I left.
No.
Didn't push the door open.
He
No,
didn't
Your
give me a
Honor.
key.
Didn't push the door.
No.
Didn't cut her lip.
No.
You have a police report?
No, ma'am, I didn't let the police come. So, but he was not there to get his daughter things. He called me later after he left and said, "Why did you do that?" "I just wanted to sit down and hang out with you and talk. I thought we could talk." And I said, "Why would you think that?"
He doesn't think that you're allowed to say no.
Well, I am saying no.
Yes.
And,
I think maybe
yeah.
he gets that now. Want to step up? Tell me your last name.
Kalish?
Ms. Kalish, you were there on the evening that Mr. Ramirez came into the house?
Yes.
Tell me what happened.
We were in her room just watching TV, and we heard the front door open. She got up to see who entered the house, and before she got to the door, he was already standing there. She opened the door, and he pushed the door open and pushed her.
Did you say anything about calling the police?
She did call the police. I was there. She
And what
called
happened?
the police, telling them that he had came in the house without permission, but the police didn't show up.
They never showed up?
Well, she didn't want them to come over.
Why?
The calls can take an hour to 2 or 3 hours, and I didn't want to waste their time. He was already gone. I felt safe in the house, and I knew that I could just call back if he came back.
Now, what was the date that this happened?
January 14th, around there.
Why is this picture dated February 9th?
Because that's when I printed the picture, and my digital camera, once I changed the batteries, the date doesn't set. So I have a digital camera. I have the camera with me. I didn't print
Did
the
you seek
photos.
any medical treatment?
No, ma'am.
Okay. You owe her $1,960. Do you understand? And you can go pick up your stuff within 5 days, the stuff that's on this list. Don't go back and bother her anymore. She doesn't want to have anything to do with you anymore. Do you understand?
It's mutual.
It's finished. Over. Got it?
Mutual.
Thank you. That's all.
Rachel Maffitt is suing her ex-boyfriend, Brad Simmons, for unpaid rent and bills while they live together. Brad claims he owes her nothing.
Ah, Bird, I really am so glad I don't use this internet thing. Miss Maffitt, you met the defendant on something called MySpace.
Yes.
Which is on the internet where people go to meet each other rather than, meeting each other for a cup of coffee or whatever. You exchange information. And you knew him for a brief period of time, and he moved in.
Yes, he asked to move in.
And it is your claim that while he was there, he paid no rent and bills. He owes you $2,000 for the time that he lived with you. Mr. Simmons says that there was never a financial agreement when he moved in. It was only when he left, unceremoniously, according to Miss Maffitt. You left her a note?
No, ma'am.
What did you do?
I packed up all my stuff while she was gone because of the fact that she was a little unstable. I didn't feel comfortable staying there. I packed all my stuff, so I headed out of there, and then I went back to the house and waited for her to come home. And then I told her face to face.
Oh, okay. Well, not as bad as I thought.
Your Honor, I do have a note.
You do have a note?
Yes, I do.
I'd like to see the note. When did you get the note?
When I came home and found all of his stuff gone from the house.
The note was only...
Okay. So you write this letter because you believed she was involved with a couple of other people at the same time she was involved with you. It's a very hurt letter, and you say, I can't talk to you right now. You want to communicate with me through MySpace because you're too hurt. You couldn't trust her. Okay, got it. When did you move in, Mr. Simmons?
It was sometime before Christmas. I don't know the exact date.
You remember the date?
I do not. It was probably after 3 or 4 dates, though.
Sometime in mid-December
Yes, ma'am.
of '06. And you moved in at her invitation.
Yes, ma'am.
And when did you move out?
I moved out, it was the first week of February.
So let's say
It was before Valentine's Day.
Remember when he moved out?
It was before Valentine's Day, but he was over at my house probably 5 days a week after that. He promised that we would get back together, and
So he lived
still
with
loved
you
me.
maybe 6 weeks.
right.
That is untrue. I did not go after.
Shh. Did anybody live with you before, Miss Maffitt?
Not in that apartment, no.
Has anybody lived with you since?
No.
So you weren't looking for somebody to share the bills with.
No, I was not.
So what money do you think he owes you for the
He owes
6
me-
weeks that he was there?
He lived there for probably 8 weeks, and
6 weeks. Keep going.
And he did say that he would pay for half of the bills. He actually asked me if he could live with me. He says that he thinks it may be the L word, and so that he wanted to come live with me because his family was unstable, and he said that his father was beating him.
That is untrue, Your Honor.
Listen to me. He left. You have no downside.
Well, I paid for all of the food. He eats probably enough for 3 people a day.
Yeah?
And he did promise me to pay $2,000 from a bonus that he was going to be getting from his new job. And every time I would go to pay bills, he would say, oh, no, it's okay, you're going to get that other money, so we can do this instead and have fun and eat out and things like that. So I did spend money on things that I normally wouldn't have if I were living alone. I work 2 jobs, and I am trying to finish school, so I'm just barely eking by.
Mr. Simmons says he was there.
He gave me $300 when he first moved in, which we promptly used on food and going out to eat.
Was it 3 or 5?
It was $500. I gave her $300 when I moved in, like she said, and then at another point, about 2 days before we broke up, we went out to eat with my uncle at Johnny's Pizza, and I gave her another $200.
Do you feel, Mr. Simmons, as if you owe her any money?
No, ma'am.
Was there ever an agreement for you to pay rent there?
No, ma'am. When I moved out, I figured the $500 I gave her, plus I maintained the upkeep of the house, and I cooked. So I feel
Well,
that's...
you don't get credit for that.
I feel that The money that I gave her at the time that I was there was
You gave her $500?
Yes, ma'am.
What's your rent, by the way?
My rent is $580 a month.
He's paid you enough, Miss Moffat.
Miss Judge Judy, I actually have an email here stating that he was going to give me the $2,000.
Oh, then I'll see it.
I never sent an email. She did have access to my email password.
No, I did not.
Just a
Because it
second.
was saved on her computer.
Just a second.
Judge, I also have emails saying that he would lie in court, that he admitted to lying in court. He admitted to cheating on me with men.
That's untrue, Your Honor.
Oh, listen, I'm not interested
That he
in
wasn't working
I'm
when
not
he was
interested in that. It
working.
has nothing to do with me. Absolutely nothing to do with me. The only thing that has to do with me is whether or not you just refuse to put a period and say, made a mistake, shouldn't have invited this guy in to live with me after knowing him for just 4 dates. You have no downside. He gave you $500. He was there for 6 weeks, and I'm not sure that you wrote this thing yourself. Case is dismissed, Miss Moffat. Put a period. It's over. Goodbye.
Christine Paget says ex-boyfriend Owen Plaster owes for the return of money paid toward his rent and bills. Owen is countersuing, claiming Christine vandalized his apartment.
Miss Paget, how long were you and Mr. Plaster involved in a relationship?
About 8 years.
And for what period of those 8 years did you live together?
We lived together most of them, but because of our work, we traveled a lot. So a lot of times I was in New York, but we shared the house in Phoenix.
Okay. When was the house in Phoenix purchased?
1997.
And you were living together at the time?
Yes.
Did you move into the house together?
Yes.
House was in your name?
Yes.
And both of you were working?
Yes.
So finances were not an issue when you lived together?
No.
All right. This is your case, Miss Paget. After this on-again, off-again relationship, it was on for 8 years and then it was off for a while. And then the two of you, according to what I read, tried to rekindle the relationship, and you had sold the house.
Yes.
And Mr. Plaster took an apartment. According to you, you didn't want to be bothered with paying half of the rent monthly, so that you prepaid the entire year of 14 months lease to Mr. Plaster so that you didn't have to be bothered.
Exactly.
And shortly after you gave him this check, Mr. Plaster advised you that he had somebody else and he wanted you out.
Yes.
So you want that money back.
Correct.
Mr. Plaster says that that money was not for half the rent. Mr. Plaster says that the two of you had an agreement during the time that you moved into this house together, that he contributed to the house, including the mortgage payment while he was living there, something that you agree with, and that you had an agreement that when the house was sold, you would split whatever increased equity there was during the time that you were living together, since he was, in fact, reducing the mortgage with his mortgage payment and paying half the bills on the house, so that what you were really doing when you gave him this check was keeping your promise to give him some of the equity in the house. That's your defense.
Yes.
And you have a counterclaim because you say that when she did move out, she did some vandalizing in the house and took some property that was actually yours. You want that property back and you want some compensation for the vandalism. In 1997, Miss Paget, when you purchased the house, what did you purchase the house for? You remember the purchase?
$108,000.
And what did you sell it for?
I sold it for $236,000.
When did you sell it?
October 2005.
And when did you give Mr. Plaster this check for the rent?
Well, actually, it was bank transfers from my bank account into his bank account. When we decided to rent this apartment,
Just tell me, what date did you give him the
I
check?
deposited money on 10/11
05?
for $6,000, and then on 10/24 for another $1,000.
Also in October of 2005. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, I assume that when you lived together for these 8 years, you had some sort of a discussion about what was going to happen with the equity in the house.
Absolutely.
And what was the discussion?
Exactly right as you said. However, the important part of that story that was left out was that he moved out of the house in January 2005. Had he stayed with me till October 2005, I probably would have honored that agreement. But at the time when he moved out to move in with a friend of his, I asked him, because he was already living in another bedroom, and I had asked him to please stay on as a roommate, help me sell the house. I didn't have a job at the time. You know, you're putting me in dire straits if you move out. Stay with me. Let's get the house sold. Your daughter's getting married. We can take care of this. I said, if you leave, you're not getting nothing, because you're leaving me in dire straits, and I have to maintain the residence for 10 months until I sold it by myself with no job. I had to get roommates to help me, organize.
Well, I understand your problem, Miss Paget. However, You cannot unilaterally change what you told me you had. You had a contract with Mr. Plaster that seems perfectly reasonable to me, that since the two of you had a financial arrangement where each of you was contributing to this household and reducing the mortgage, you were living together as a family, it is perfectly reasonable to have had the contract that you acknowledged that you had, that when and if the house was sold, you would give him, because he had been paying into the house, a portion of the profit from the house.
Yes.
Perfectly reasonable.
Yes.
Now, the fact that he decided to move out and you said to him, if you move out, I'm not going to honor that contract, doesn't mean that that happens. Unless he says, well, fine, I'm moving out anyway, and I agree that you don't have to honor the contract. But that's not what happened.
That is what happened.
No. No, that's not what you told me.
No, that
you
is what
told me.
happened.
Now listen to me. What you told me was you said to him, if you move out,
right,
I'm not going to honor our agreement.
And he agreed.
No, you said he moved out anyway.
Right.
Well, that's not agreeing with you, madam. He just left. That's not saying I agree that you don't have to honor the contract. He just says, I'm leaving anyway. So while he does not have a counterclaim for that, I am finding that the money that you gave him was for the contract that you had with him for the 8 years that you lived together in this house that you sold, and that you sold for a substantial profit. You more than doubled your money. He paid down the mortgage, and he should be entitled to a portion of that. So, has he sued you on the contract that you had to give him half the profits of the house?
No.
Well, he should.
Because it was agreed that we didn't.
No. Listen to me. I don't believe that at all. And I'm telling you that if he doesn't sue you for half the profits on the house, consider yourself really lucky that I'm speaking. Consider yourself, Miss Paget, really lucky. Because if he sued you in a court where I was sitting, that had a much higher jurisdiction than the $5,000 I have, I would find that you had a contract with him that he fulfilled by contributing to the house for the 8 years that you lived together, and that you cannot unilaterally breach that contract because you didn't want him to leave and leave you in the lurch for 10 months. I might do something equitable, like cutting 10 months' worth of the mortgage payments out and carving that out of his share of the profits. But I'm telling you right now, for the $6,000 that you gave him, you got away with a bargain. I wouldn't complain. Now I'm going to hear your counterclaim. Go ahead.
This is a case of a woman scorn.
Listen, don't tell me what it's about, sir. Don't tell me what a case is about, sir. I'm asking you whether you have a legitimate counterclaim that you want me to hear, or whether you just want to forget it.
Well, once I let her know that I was seeing someone else, she came to get her things, and I gave her a few days in the apartment to get her stuff out. And when I returned, I've got photographs of the vandalism.
I'd like to see the photographs, Bert, please.
And I've got lots of notes that were left and taped on the walls, just crazy things all over the place. Doors were written on, mirrors were written on, photographs stapled to the walls, photographs torn up, my guitars and other property just thrown everywhere. All of my things that were in boxes were dumped in bathtubs and in closet floors, along with half-eaten hamburgers and just
She was
trash.
very angry.
She was very angry.
Are you still in that apartment?
Yes.
How much did it cost you to clean it up?
It was very difficult to clean it up.
My question was, I saw the pictures, sir. How much did it cost you to clean up the apartment?
Nothing. Just my own time.
So it took your time. Show these photographs to the plaintiff, please. Mr. Plaster, just for my own information, sir, why did you allow Miss Paget to move her things into the apartment if you were seeing someone else?
I started seeing someone else after her things were in the apartment.
Not before?
Correct. We moved into the apartment, but she moved to New Jersey, so she only stayed a few days in the apartment at all.
Well, she was sort of hoping that things would work out between you, I assume, which is why she moved her things into the apartment. She didn't move into the apartment for storage purposes. Why'd you trash the apartment?
Because he just didn't face me. And I just would like to say something about the mortgage. He did not contribute to the mortgage every month.
Miss Paget,
He didn't.
Paget, I got the information from the two of you before I started to hear your case. And that was that the two of you lived together peacefully for 8 years. You seem like an intelligent woman. You both worked. According to the both of you, each of you contributed to the running of the household, and that money was never an issue. And being an intelligent woman, myself, I have to assume that if he wasn't paying his fair share of the house, you wouldn't have kept him around for 8 years. What I'm telling you is the law says just because you say the agreement is over doesn't make it over.
But he moved out.
I don't care whether he moved out. Miss Padgett, I'm going to try one more time, and then I'm not going to hear any more from you. Let us say he wasn't ready to move out of the house, but you were ready to sell it. Do you think you could have sold the house without his permission?
Absolutely.
Of course, because the house is in your name.
Correct.
He's not a slave. He can move if he wants to. That doesn't mean that when you sell the house, he's not entitled to, up until the time he moved out, a portion of the increase in the value of the house, because that was your agreement. Now, you have no right to do what you did here, and he has to be compensated for that, even his time.
I paid for the security deposit on the apartment and all the first month's rent.
No, just a second. In addition to the $6,000 that you gave him, you wrote a check right out to the landlord?
Yes.
How much?
Well, the monthly rent was $1,100 and something a
So it was
month.
at least $1,100.
So it was at least $1,100
Okay,
plus
now
security deposit was.
Shh. Is that in addition to the $6,000?
Yes.
Well, then, sir, you can use that $1,100, but you're going to get back to clean up the apartment. Do you understand?
Yes.
Good. Thank you very much. It's over. Goodbye.
Michelle Compton is suing her former roommate, 21-year-old Jamie Klein, for damaging her car when she backed out of their driveway.
This is the boyfriend.
Yes.
You used to be the roommate of the defendant. Is that right?
Yes.
And these two people were roommates while you and your boyfriend were together.
Yes.
Was there anybody else living in the apartment? Or just the two of you?
Just us two.
The two of you?
Yep.
Did you ever live there?
No.
Did you stay there?
Yes, I did.
How frequently?
I would stay probably the whole month, other than 2 or 3 nights. I'd go spend the night at my mom's or my friend's.
So you were there full time?
Yes.
From when to when?
From when Adam told me he got the house with Jamie, and then from the day we left.
Well, give me the dates. I don't know that. I don't have a crystal ball.
September 1st to, I think March 18th, May 18th, something like that.
So you were there all that time?
Yes.
How did you split the bills?
When moving in, I worked at Meijer. I only made about $105 a week, and I had other bills to pay. And I told Adam that I don't have any money to pay any bills, and that if he does want me to stay with him, he knows that he is paying it, and he said that's
Miss
fine.
Klein,
Yeah.
how did you split the rent?
Well, we first on the agreement was just me and Adam, and then when he said she was moving in, I even asked her. I said, well, we need to split it. Well, I'm working at Myers right now.
She did not ask me that.
Don't speak.
She said.
Just a minute. Just answer me. You split it 2 ways?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. She has a counterclaim that I'll get to in a minute. Okay. It is your claim that Miss Klein damaged your car while backing out of the driveway.
Yep.
And you want her to pay for the damage to your car.
Yes,
That's
I
what
do.
your lawsuit is about, $1,700. Miss Klein says you shouldn't have blocked her car. And that was your habit. So she nicked it a little bit, and she's sorry, right? You can't hit her car.
You're right, but I went up there and asked her 3 times to move her car. She
What
didn't
date
come-
was that?
I do believe it was the 16th of April.
Of what?
Of March.
So right before you all went your own way.
Yep.
Why didn't you move the car?
She did not ask me to move the car. Adam asked me if I would clean the room while he's at work, so I was in the room cleaning with the music on. And she never entered the room and asked me to move my car.
And I knocked on the door.
No, she did
Every
not.
time. And said, I need to go take kids to school. I need you to move your car. She didn't come out of the room.
Who were you going to take to school?
I have a daycare, so I had to take the kids to school.
So she didn't move the car, so you hit it.
Yep, well, I tried backing out myself, and then I hit it, and then I went upstairs, and I told her about it, and I said, I gotta go take kids to school, so when I come back, I'll give you my insurance. I come back, and she's gone. So then I go back to work. About 20 minutes later, I come back to see if she's there, and the police are there. So she left and came back, and then I gave her all my insurance and all that stuff.
So what happened with the insurance?
I called my dad and asked him. He called the insurance agency, and they said because it was on private property that they will not do anything.
Well, that's not true. That's baloney. Let me see a letter from the insurance company.
I didn't get one, Your Honor.
Well, you should have one, my dear. You can't rely on your dad. How old are you?
20.
Well, grown enough to live outside the home, you're old enough to be responsible. She has no right to hit your car. Shouldn't have blocked her.
The car was not blocked.
Well, clearly, it was more difficult to get out.
That's not
Yeah,
true. That's not right.
Well, if she hit your car, she of necessity had to hit your car
She
with
did
her
it on
car.
purpose.
Listen to me! When my mouth starts to move, yours doesn't.
Okay.
Nobody with half a brain uses their own car, which might very well be damaged if she hit her car
I have
with
pictures
your
of
car.
my car.
That's just stupid, and she's not stupid. The only thing she was stupid about is letting you live in this apartment for all those months rent-free and splitting the rent because you didn't have a job that paid you enough. You didn't have a job that paid you enough to pay rent, live at home. And if your boyfriend wanted to sleep with you, then he should have paid 2/3 and she paid 1/3. You got it?
Got it.
She doesn't have to pay for you the pleasure that you had to spending the night with her.
She had people spend the night also, Your Honor. It wasn't
We're not
just me
talking
over.
about spending the night. We're talking about...
She would have boys come and stay for months at a time.
Listen to me. We're not talking about spending the night. We're talking about living there. So, what you have to do is you have to call her insurance company. She's already acknowledged she hit your car. She had no right to hit your car, and our insurance company will pay for it. Easy. Now, let's get to your counterclaim. Unpaid rent. You had no agreement with her to pay rent. Forget the rent, okay? Bills. You should have had an agreement. You didn't have an agreement. Damage to and return of value of property. Now I'll hear that. Go.
I have some letters from some witnesses.